Well, hello there, and welcome back to Migraine Relief Hotline. I'm Kelli, the migraine dietitian, and each week I'll be answering your biggest migraine questions so you can feel more confident and in control. Now, before we dive into today's question, which is about tyramine, one of those, quote, classic migraine food trigger chemicals, I wanted to mention two things. One, Bodhi is joining me today. Aren't you, Bodhi? And if you hear any panting, whining, general mischief, it's Bodhi. So he apologizes. He's having a rough morning. He really wants to play with his friends. So maybe after this recording, Bodhi, okay? And then the other thing I wanted to mention was I know we have a lot of readers in the Migraine Relief Hotline audience. So I wanted to ask what you're reading right now and what recommendations you have, because I have been in a major reading slump. I did just start a book, don't judge me, called Sociopath, and it's a memoir. It's by Patrick Greer. Her name's either Greer or Gagney. I'm so sorry. I do not remember. But it's a memoir of her experience living as someone who is diagnosed with sociopathy. Very fascinating. However, I have no idea what I'm going to start reading after this. I need some ideas. So send them my way. Leave them in the comments. Let me know what you're reading right now. Okay, so let's get into today's question. Now, a quick note before we get started. I'm a dietitian, but I'm not your dietitian. The information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. So always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes. Okay, today's question comes from Megan, and they asked, I have a tyramine intolerance. I get a horrible migraine when my bucket gets too full of tyramine. Is there a way to help with these migraine attacks besides avoiding high tyramine foods? Okay. I love how you're thinking about this, because rather than just assuming, okay, tyramine's the issue, no more tyramine, which can be pretty difficult. Tyramine's in a lot of foods, but you're thinking, how can I address this other than just avoiding tyramine foods? And that's perfect. That's the way we should be thinking about things, because 9 times out of 10, when we're having a reaction to a food, it's not a problem with the food. There's something else going on beneath the surface that's causing our body to have this reaction. So if we can figure out what that is, then we don't have to worry about food as much as far as avoiding certain foods and hunting for specific food triggers. It becomes a lot less stressful. Okay, so let's dive into this. And I love the analogy of the bucket that you're using, because this is a perfect way to describe it, right? And that's exactly how food chemicals like tyramine work. So let's start with a little bit of science here, okay? So for those of you who aren't super familiar with tyramine and what it actually is, tyramine is a compound that shows up in foods like aged cheese, cured meats, soy sauce, fermented things. It's known as a biogenic amine. So essentially, it's a protein that affects your body in some way, okay? And it's been blamed for what are known as cheese headaches for decades, honestly. So this isn't anything new. The way it works in theory is that when you eat tyramine, it triggers the release of a chemical called norepinephrine, which is a stress hormone in your body. And norepinephrine can raise your blood pressure. It can affect how your trigeminal nerve responds. And that's the main pain pathway involved in migraine attacks, or at least that's what we think. So here's what isn't discussed enough when it comes to tyramine, and honestly a lot of food chemicals, is that in research, in actual practice, migraine attacks only happen when you're given huge doses of tyramine in isolation. They're giving very high doses of tyramine that you wouldn't normally get from eating food, right? Especially not a mixed meal. Now, maybe if you're eating, a huge block of cheese on its own, then maybe. But for most people, tyramine is not a guaranteed trigger in normal circumstances, even for someone with migraine. It's not a guaranteed trigger or even a likely trigger in normal circumstances. It only becomes an issue when your system is already stressed, or your tyramine bucket, if that's the analogy we're using here, is full, which is what Megan was alluding to. So what can you do besides avoiding tyramine in foods? And the answer isn't more restriction. Okay, it's about building tolerance. So here's how we can do that. And this will also give you a little bit more information about what can be behind an issue with tyramine. Now, the first thing you can consider is supporting your MAO enzyme production. in your body. This is an enzyme you produce naturally. And this MAO, or monoamine oxidase enzyme, is what breaks down tyramine. So some people have slower MAO activity, which means tyramine is able to build up more easily. Now, there are some medications that can cause this, and that's where a lot of the initial research about tyramine came from, is these MAO inhibitor medications, right? Now, these are not as common anymore. However, it is possible that maybe your body isn't producing enough MAO on its own, and that can impact your ability to process tyramines. So you can support this process by reducing overall inflammation and gut burden. So that's its own topic, but doing what you can to keep inflammation levels low. So eating plenty of plant foods, keeping stress to a minimum, addressing any gut imbalances like overgrowths and things like that. If you suspect those are present, those can all help. Another thing is supporting mitochondrial health. So this can look like boosting magnesium, CoQ10, B2. These can all help with mitochondrial function, as can exercise if that's something that you can add to your plate right now. And then looking at your nervous system state, because chronic fight or flight mode, which is your sympathetic nervous system, this can downregulate enzyme function. Wild, right? So just because you're stuck in that survival mode, your body may not be able to process anything as effectively, including things like tyramine that can trigger migraine attacks. So these are the types of things that you can start working towards if you know that you have an issue with tyramine, or you suspect you do, and you want to make sure that your body has its own innate ability to break it down most effectively. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to look into. Now, anytime we're talking about food intolerances, food sensitivities, food reactions, we have to dig more into gut health, because that's where food is processed, right? So anytime we have an issue with food, it's likely originating in the gut, or at least partly. So if you have gut inflammation, dysbiosis, leaky gut, or increased intestinal permeability, right? Intestinal hyperpermeability, your tolerance for tyramine and other food chemicals can drop. It can become much harder for you to process them. Not to mention that certain gut bacteria can actually make tyramine and other biogenic amines, other chemicals like histamine. So that's where gut support really comes into play. Not just trying to, keep inflammation in check, which is definitely a good thing to do, but also working to support your microbiome, your beneficial gut bacteria. Now, you can, of course, get a gut health test, and that's something I love to do with my clients. I order the GI map a lot for my clients, but you don't have to do testing to get started on improving your gut health. And some people don't even need testing once they start incorporating some beneficial habits. So increasing plant diversity of your meals. So not just working to eat vegetables, which is step one, right? We need to just eat some at all. But once you're in the habit of eating veggies, you want to work to increase the types of plant foods that you're eating, the different colors that you're eating, because all of those different plants, fruits, veggies, different colors support different gut bacteria. So it helps you create a nice, diverse, healthy microbiome. That's why we want to do that. Now, if you're at the point where it's hard for you to tolerate fruits and veggies, like it just makes your stomach feel bad, that's a sign in itself that we need to focus on gut health. You can also try using like pureed soups and smoothies to help get plant foods into your diet that are easier to digest. And that's another way to gently feed your beneficial bacteria. And then this is something I actually talked about on Instagram Live recently that almost all of my clients need support with when we first start working together, and that is meal hygiene. So just making sure that you're relaxed around meal times, that you're slowing down, that you're not eating in a rush, or ideally not eating like in the car or at your desk, and that you're chewing your food thoughtfully and not eating too quickly. That actually plays a huge role in our ability to digest food, because digestion starts in the mouth. So we've got to do our part so that our body can do the rest of the heavy lifting. Next, I want to focus more heavily on the nervous system. So your nervous system plays a huge role in your reaction to these food chemicals as well. So if your body thinks it's in danger all the time, it's going to react to things it otherwise could handle, because it's in that reactive state. And I see this all the time in Raise Your Threshold, working with my clients. When we help people feel safer in their body, their food tolerance increases without really doing a whole lot else. So it's not a magic cure for food sensitivities or food intolerances, food reactions, but wow, it really helps a lot when you can help support your body's ability to switch into that parasympathetic nervous system more frequently, to hang out in that rest and digest mode instead of being in survival mode all the time, being in fight or flight mode. None of us want to be stuck there, right? We're not doing it intentionally, but intentionally working towards relaxing the nervous system can help with so many things. So you already know a lot of these habits that you can incorporate to support the nervous system, right? Deep breaths, slow morning routines, a little movement, doing things that bring you joy, getting some natural light. These things really do matter. It's not just like fluffy self-care stuff. It really can build resilience. And the key to doing that is choosing a couple things that you actually like doing and doing them consistently. Another thing you can focus on is reducing the background stress on your system. So this is, again, thinking back to that bucket analogy. Tyramine might be the thing that overflowed your bucket, but what's already in the bucket matters too. And it's not just tyramine, right? We like to think of all of these things as being separate from themselves. Like we have a tyramine bucket and we have a histamine bucket and we have a migraine bucket. It's all one bucket, and thinking about it that way can help reduce some of the pressure that we can feel to be perfect in all these different areas. So remember things like sleep debt and poor blood sugar control and inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, vitamin and mineral deficiencies. All of these affect your tolerance, your overall tolerance, your overall migraine threshold, right? They fill your bucket. So what some people find more comfortable when they're trying to address food intolerances and food reactions is to work on these other things first. So rather than just trying to add tyramine foods back in right away, which can be scary, work on supporting your sleep and supporting your blood sugar control and looking into gut health. Do those things first so that you can improve your overall health, your overall resilience, and then it's going to be a lot easier for you to try and add food triggers back in. This is typically the route that I take when I'm working with a client who has a ton of food triggers or has a ton of concerns around possible food triggers. We're not jumping right in and adding in a ton of new scary foods right away, unless they want to. We're working on everything else to build resilience, to empty that bucket, and then it's a lot easier. So I know it's easier said than done, but try not to fear these foods. Try not to fear, tyramine. Get curious about it. This is not about avoiding tyramine forever. That's not the goal, and that's not actually helping anything. It's about supporting your system so that you can eat the things that you are anxious about or that seem to cause you issues without stressing about it and without it completely overloading your system. That's the entire vibe of Raise Your Threshold. That's the entire vibe of the approach that I like to take. We're not restricting, we're not making your life smaller, we're making your life bigger by boosting your resilience, raising your migraine threshold so that you're not having to overanalyze every tiny thing that you eat and do. That's exhausting. So if this is something that you need more help with, you know where to find me, but your life does not have to be small just to avoid migraine, okay? That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, follow, leave a review or a rating, and share it with a friend who might find it helpful too. If you have a question you'd like answered, you can submit it anytime using the link in the show notes. And if you're ready for more support, my Raise Your Threshold membership is always here to help you dive deeper into managing migraine. You can also check that out in the show notes, or you can always DM me on Instagram if you want to chat further. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.